Hi, I'm Jessica Eves Matthews. I am a business and intellectual property lawyer and data security and privacy expert. And I want to talk to you briefly about that regulation you probably heard a lot about, GDPR, which stands for General Data Protection Regulation. It was passed in Europe, in the European Union, the EU, and went into full effect on May 25th. But it does apply to businesses in other parts of the world, and specifically, I'm a lawyer in the United States, and it does apply to businesses in the United States. And I think that there's been a lot of misinformation about it, and I think a lot of people have made assumptions that the regulation did not apply to them because they were not in Europe or they did not do business with people in Europe. But I don't want to get into a ton of confusing detail about it right now, but I want you to understand that under the regulation, if you collect, store, or use personally identifiable information about European citizens, then you are subject to the regulation. And collection can be anything that involves like opt-in boxes, getting people's email addresses for your email list. It also includes automatic data collection. So if your website collects data via cookies, for example, or if you do Facebook advertising, if you use Facebook pixels, if you do retargeted marketing, those not only do those systems collect data via cookies, and it is personally identifiable, even though it's not somebody's name or email address, but it is their IP address. And often it also includes their geographic location, but it also is monitoring their online activities because that's what Facebook ads and retargeted marketing systems are designed to do. And so even if somebody isn't opting into your email list or buying a product or service from you, you might inadvertently be collecting information on EU citizens through those methods. You also may be doing business with people in the EU. They may be buying your products or services on your website. And so those are all ways that you could end up collecting information about citizens of the EU, knowingly or unknowingly. And if you do, then the regulation applies to you. It also applies to storing the data. So if you have collected that data and then you store it in a database, like an email list, for example, that also falls under the regulation. And then it also applies to using it. So if you use that information in any way, whether it's to communicate with that person via email and to market to them, but it also may be making use of the data in other ways, you're also governed by the regulation. And yes, they do have the ability to enforce this regulation against US businesses, and partly because they may be able to come after you directly, depending on your situation. But if not, the Federal Trade Commission in the US will most likely be enforcing it. There's a very tight relationship between the US government and the EU. We're trade partners, and the FTC has historically worked with the EU on data privacy and data security issues. So we fully expect that the FTC will be enforcing this regulation against US based businesses. And the FTC also has its own rules about maintaining security and privacy of personally identifying information. So there's a lot at play here. It basically requires that you get into compliance with the GDPR as soon as you possibly can. A failure to do it can subject you to a number of problems. The biggest one being that under the GDPR, you could actually be fined up to 20 million euros. I think it's like 21 million euros, and or in the alternative, 4% of your net global revenue for the previous fiscal year. Now, for a small business, 4% is not going to be a huge number, and you obviously probably won't get fined 21 million euros. But if you have an email list of 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, each email that you send out is a separate violation. So it's not just like the one email blast that goes out to the entire list is a violation. It's every single email. So you've got like 100 violations or 1,000 violations. And the more violations you have, the more likely you are going to get hit with a costly fine, which can really add up. Now, if you're a big business like Amazon that had 187 billion in net global revenue last year in 2017, their fines would be probably about $7 billion per violation. So they've got a huge potential for fines under the regulation. You probably aren't facing that big of a fine, but my guess is that a multi-thousand-dollar fine, tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars, could hurt, cripple, or actually kill your business. And so it is not worth it to mess around with this. And it's actually relatively simple to do some steps to get your business in compliance, or at least make a good faith effort to get into compliance with the regulation. I've created a GDPR compliance packet. Basically, I created this because when I sat down, I'm an entrepreneur as well, not just a lawyer. And when I sat down to get my businesses GDPR compliant, I realized that this could be overwhelming and paralyzing for some people. The regulation is over 200 pages long, and obviously there's a lot of legal jargon and details and minutia involved in it. And so I wanted to create a system that would make it relatively simple to do what you need to do without having to go through, the pain of becoming an expert yourself in GDPR, or having to pay a lawyer to give you customized advice that could be very, very expensive, because most lawyers are not knowledgeable about the GDPR. And of course, they're not going to turn your business away. So they're going to spend a lot of time getting up to speed. Most likely, they're going to pass that cost on to you in the way of their fees. So I created this packet so that it would be pretty simple and inexpensive to do the things that you need to do in your business to get in compliance as quickly as possible. And as a part of my packet, I've also created a private Facebook group, and I am in there answering questions, supporting you, and helping you do the things you need to do to make a good faith effort to get in compliance with the regulation. And you're going to learn all about that packet here on this page down below this video. And I hope that you will take advantage of this and get it done, because experts are saying that 79% of businesses are not in compliance as of today. This is a week after the deadline, the May 25th deadline. And so there's a lot of businesses that don't know this applies to them, and it could be very problematic for your business. So don't risk it. And they're also saying that the FTC and even other countries are going to probably follow suit, and that the standards that have been raised in this new regulation are probably going to be copied by other governments. And this is just the way it's going to be in the future. It's really important that you just get your business up to speed on all of this so that you can get on with running your business and doing what you do best. So scroll down, read about it, get the packet, and then come join the private Facebook group, and tell your friends and family about this too. If you have friends and family who are in business and they are not yet in compliance, they are putting their businesses at risk. So I hope that you'll share this information with them as well. But scroll on down, purchase the compliance packet, and then I will see you in the private Facebook group. You'll get a link for that. Once you purchase, you'll get an email with a link to the private Facebook group, and I'll see you in there.